Anytime.
Okay. I think we're all ready. Okay. I'd like to call the Pelham Board of Education meeting of August 25th, 2021 to order. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
Must be the master wear.
scared it away, Steve.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. Should be back.
Okay, we're good?
Think so.
Okay. Item 2.4 is the reiteration of executive session motions. Sue?
The board met in executive session, for discussions with our attorney and to discuss the employment history of a particular person.
Okay, welcome to the Pelham Board of Education meeting, the first one of the 2021-2022 school year. Tonight, the board is expected to adopt goals for the 2021-2022 school year, establish Board of Education committees, and set meeting dates, which we determined at our board retreat last month. Additionally, the district safety plan is up for adoption. When we closed out last school year, we referenced this school year as the light at the end of the tunnel, and perhaps wishfully, we had hoped that things would return to something resembling more normalcy. Clearly, the Delta variant had another vision in mind. Nevertheless, we are committed to prioritizing the highest quality of full-time in-person education possible for all Pelham students, supporting their physical and emotional health while balancing the safety needs of students and staff while we continue to work within the context of the pandemic. Like last year, our success hinges on flexibility, an open mind, ongoing feedback, and a humble willingness to adapt and adjust as needed. We look forward to Dr. Champ's two opening school forums for parents on August 31st, where she'll share the district's most current plans for the school year and provide an opportunity for parents to ask questions in advance of the first day of school. While the tunnel is a little longer than we had hoped, the light is still in close view. We have some important updates, which I wanted to call attention to. The board's looking forward to our annual buildings and facilities tour next Wednesday evening. It's clear that our custodial staff has been busy this summer and that a lot of progress has been made on our capital improvements projects. We are especially excited to see the bond project updates at the middle school and high school, at Prospect Hill, and of course at the new Hutchinson School. September 9th not only marks the first day of school for students, but it's also the official ribbon cutting for our new Hutchinson Elementary School. This is a date I've personally looked forward to all summer. The following evening on September 10th, we'll be unveiling the plaque honoring Anthony Sinertia Jr. on Glover Field at the first varsity home football game of the season. These dates, along with the various back-to-school nights and welcome back events, will make for an exciting September. In closing, I'd like to express our gratitude for the hard work and strength of the teachers, administrators, and staff over the last year. We look forward to working together to move through whatever challenges the new year brings. So, I always think that's your report. I forget that section 3 is approval of the minutes. Yes. Do I have a motion for the 3.1, which is the annual reorganization meeting, followed by the regular meeting of July 13th?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Vinny. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You put
No, he picked up his hand.
Okay, thank you. I'll count on you because I can't see him.
I think I'm the only one that can see it.
I think
Oh, Colleen can see him? Okay,
Colleen's keeping track.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, so now this brings us to section 4, which is administrative and committee reports. 4.1 is the superintendent's report.
Okay, great, thanks so much, and welcome back, it's nice to see everyone. This is always one of the biggest gaps in the year between our reorg and then the end of August, so that's why there's a ton of things on the agenda. So I've got quite a few things to share as part of my report tonight. So starting with, we're very pleased to have our athletic programs back in full swing this year. Section 1 in the state did allow for that to go forward. We had 509 students turn out for tryouts this past week, which was just tremendous. And this year we're running the normal spring sports, so JV and varsity boys and girls cross country, cheerleading, field hockey, football for the boys, field hockey for the girls, obviously, boys and girls soccer, girls tennis, and volleyball. That started this past week. Modified starts on September 13th, and we'll be running programs in modified cheerleading, boys and girls cross country, field hockey, football, boys and girls soccer, and volleyball. So very, very active athletic programs back up and running. Parents who are involved and students probably have already found out that we've shifted to using Final Forms this year, which is a new software program for registering and for housing all the information related to athletics. Mr. Hodge used this in his prior district, has brought it to us, and already we're seeing some great benefits to it, just as far as rostering and having everything in one organized place. So we're excited to get that in place, and I would expect over time you'll see increased use of that as we implement it further with each of the seasons and start to build out our capacity with that. And then also an important resource that maybe was not as used in the past, that is actually the crux of where Mr. Hodge is putting most of the information, is on the district athletics webpage. So that's something we want to encourage students and parents to get into the habit of going. That's your first place to go. It's got a treasure trove of information now. It's got a Google Calendar with all the practices that's kept up to date with even the changes, because they're often, especially once you get into bad weather, can be daily changes to the athletics schedule. So please explore that, get used to that, and that's really going to be the go-to place moving forward. So we're excited to start that season off and look forward to lots of great things from our students this fall. One award that we want to mention, that even though the school year ended, the awards tend to follow a little bit at times. Once again, the Pelham, our school newspaper, has been awarded a significant award. The Quill and Scroll, which is the International High School Journalism Honor Society, has awarded the 2021 Pelham the International First Place Award. This is especially impressive given that the Pelham was virtual for the entire school year, and they published one hard copy. They said only one published hard copy, but it was an amazing published copy that we got right at the end of the school year. It's important to note Quill and Scroll has a membership of 14,104 high schools in all of the U.S., over the 50 states, as well as 44 countries. So the international, to be awarded the International First Place Award, you can see, is pretty significant. So congratulations to the Pelham staff and members. It's great. As Jessica mentioned, tonight goals are being approved, the district goals for the year. I just want to thank the board for really great conversation around those this year. I think they're very thoughtful, and I think it's really important, as the community will see as they look at the goals tonight, which will continue to be our theme, has been, and will continue into the year, be prioritizing the highest quality full-time in-person instruction for our students and supporting their emotional, physical health and well-being. We're going to be resharing a lot of the reopening plans in the very near future. As was mentioned too, there will be a staff session on Monday the 30th, 2 parent sessions on Tuesday the 31st, a morning and an evening one, so that hopefully folks can find which one is convenient to them. I do want to share tonight, though, a lot of what will be shared in those plans, certainly for the board's benefit and for anyone else who's watching. I will, tonight I'm going to be sharing the information with the caveat, and I think the board is very much aware of that we have not yet gotten the promised guidance from the State Department of Education. I know it sounds like I'm quoting from last year, but with the change in governor, Certainly, there was a change in direction midweek, so Governor Hochul has indicated that there will be guidance coming from the DOH. So what I'm going to share tonight is based on our current best thinking, based on what we did in the spring, based on the New York State Education Department guidance that's come out. But I'm putting it out with the caveat that we're going to have to remain flexible and things may adjust. But I figure at this point, most of it I do expect is pretty on target, and it'll give us a good opportunity to ask questions, reflect, and then we'll be able hopefully to finalize. We're told that that information should come this week. That's information related to quarantines, to certainly the mask mandate we all know about verbally. That should come out in writing. Any further guidance on vaccination requirements, and things of that nature. So a lot of the big questions that are out there, we want to make sure that we're in alignment. So the DOH is waiting, the local DOH is waiting for the state DOH so that we can align things and hopefully get a clear picture for this year. That being said, we'll present the best of our thinking for tonight. Make sure I hit all those points. Okay, so to that end, just want to go through, I know there's a lot to take in. I've shared some of this with the board in advance, and this is really going to be reiterated at our parent sessions and staff sessions next week. So as always, we're starting with mitigation strategies. I think we all recognize that vaccinations are the most effective mitigation strategy possible. As far as practices within the school, we're going to really be picking up where we left off last year, making sure to do the cleanings, sanitizing, hand washing practices, et cetera. All of our HVAC systems have gotten service this summer, and updated filters were appropriate. So we should be in good shape there. We had already required it, and as we know, the governor will be requiring as well universal masking indoors. We started that back on campus effective today, and that's for vaccinated or unvaccinated. And reminder that it needs to be at least 2 layers of masking. Masks are not required outdoors at this point in time. As far as classroom setups, we will be going similar to what we did in the spring, where we moved back down to 3 feet. When possible is the caveat for this year, as the guidance that's come out has said 3 feet when possible, with the goal of having all students in school. So we found out at the elementary level in particular, the flexible furnishings really helped in achieving that 3 feet, so we're definitely going to be doing that. We are not going to be using the barriers that we used last year. We're done with those for this point. At this point, the teachers will have the ability to set desks up in the whatever they feel is the best instructional arrangement. And we discovered again with that last year, even sometimes if students were facing each other, we got better spacing. So with our reopening task force, they felt that spacing is the most important piece. So if you get better spacing, even though the directionality might be different, that's always going to be one of your more important strategies. I know in our prior announcements to the community, we did put out that we were going to be continuing with our daily screener. The State Education Department guidance no longer recommends that or requires that. Speaking with our building principals, there's a lot of logistics around that, a lot of human resources and paper resources that could be used better elsewhere. So our hope is to actually discontinue the screener going forward this year. Again, we need to wait and see what comes from the DOH, because I think the DOH's preference is that we do keep it. So at this point, we put out what we put out. The website has been updated to say that we are doing the screener, but if, pending a different perspective from the board or further guidance, we would like to actually discontinue use of the screener for next year.
Question about that.
Yeah.
Was it effective?
I think
Did
it was
we
effective.
catch cases and?
I don't know if Julia has anything to add to this. I felt that it was generally effective on the reminder level of if a staff member couldn't say no to all of those questions, or a parent couldn't say no to all those questions, they knew you can't
Okay.
come to school. So I think it was effective in keeping people from coming. Whether there was, people that came with it, without it, we actually had processes in place to make sure that everybody filled it out, so no one came into the school without it.
Well,
Beyond that,
We also, during the day, if we needed to, and we saw somebody with symptoms, we would send them home.
can you go to the mic to say that, please, Julie?
I
think the fact that during the day, if we had students or staff members who had symptoms or showed symptoms, we asked them to go home anyway and get tested. So either way, whether they were reminded every morning, we still had that during the day of making sure that folks that had, showed symptoms were asked to go home.
So it was effective indirectly? I mean,
I think it was a good reminder.
okay.
So that's kind of John, I think you hit right on the behavioral.
Yeah.
That's kind of the risk. If
I
we
hadn't thought about
discontinue
that,
it, we
yeah.
lose a little bit of that. So we would have to, in all of our messaging, have continual reminders about, if you don't feel well, stay home. If you don't feel well, stay home. Our nurses were really good towards the end of the year as well about helping parents differentiate between allergies versus COVID symptoms, because that was, I know Jessica experienced that many times. Runny nose can be from a lot of different things. So I think if people are vigilant about it and in communication with the nurses, I think we can continue to make some good decisions on that front. So as I said, once we get the guidance from the state, we'll finalize our approach on that.
Sorry.
At lunch, we're going to be continuing with 6-foot distancing. So at this campus, secondary campus, that means we're going to continue to use the card tables in the cafeterias and in the blue gym so that students can be 6 feet because they'll be without masks. At the elementary level, depends on the building. Some buildings may be able to get 6 feet distancing within the classroom or use of space right outside of it, or use of outdoors. Other buildings can't within the classroom, so we've designed some staggered lunch schedules that will enable us to start using the lunchrooms again, but at lower density. So they may have, maybe instead of 3 grade levels at a time, they may have 1 or 2 grade levels in at a time, so they can maintain 6 feet, and they'll rotate students through differently. So it's going to depend building to building, but I think the basic consistent point is that all students will be eating 6 feet apart. And by using those staggered schedules, that should reduce the need for supervision that we had last year. We relied heavily in some schools on parent volunteers, additional monitors. It should reduce that need and make it more sustainable.
Cheryl, so when you say staggered, you mean some students will be in the lunch eating space, some will be in their classrooms spread out, not that some will be eating lunch at 9 o'clock in the morning and...
They will be eating lunch at different times, but it won't be at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I think it expands the lunch hour to like an hour and a half, start to finish, something like that. Again, it depends on the building. And to be honest, with Hutchinson, that's a schedule that we may use permanently, just because of the different space, and having an actual cafeteria lunch space gives us new freedoms there. As far as elementary lunch, we do, given that it's COVID, still dealing with 6 feet, still dealing with these staggered schedules or potential classroom eating. We're planning to go again with only cold lunch options and with nut-free schools again, since we're gonna have some classroom eating. We just found it much safer and more manageable logistically to go with those restrictions. One thing we'll be firming up exactly to what degree, but one thing that I know will be very popular is we are planning to allow classes to commingle for recess outdoors in the coming year. That was something now, and again, that will be largely driven by the quarantine guidance. What we found most of last year, and again, Julia will correct me if I'm wrong, when people were outdoors masked, there was no quarantining involved if they were exposed. If they were outdoors unmasked and exposed, a close contact, they were then quarantined. Okay, so that's what we've got to find out, is what the DOH's new guidance is going to be around quarantining outdoors. If it's no longer an issue there, then we likely will let the classes mix outdoors, which I think from a social perspective will make a lot of children very happy, and a lot of parents as well, who, we're seeing their child really very limited in their social interactions. For the high school, we are, again, because of the logistics around this, planning to continue with open campus grades 9 through 12 for another year. The next big piece, and again, there will be more information coming out on this. We are putting in place, again, a voluntary surveillance testing program for students K-12 and staff. Certainly want to focus on those students under 12 for now, so the staff and students under 12, staff of students who are under 12. The program we're looking to put in place this year, though, will not be the Binex antigen test. We're looking to partner with the county Department of Health, who's putting together a grant. Just about every district in the county will be partnering with them. They've got contracted with third-party vendors who will come in and provide PCR saliva tests that can either be administered at home and brought in or administered here at school. We'll set up a weekly testing regimen, and the goal is to test about 20% of the general school population on a weekly basis. That will still require parental consent, so once we get those forms and more information about that, we'll be sending it home. We're still waiting to hear who our partner will be, but that information should be solidified within the next week. We're also going to be sending out a parent survey to ask parents to voluntarily let us know if their child is vaccinated. That's going to help as far as quarantining status and as far as knowing, again, where we should be targeting our surveillance testing, although we do recognize with the Delta variant that even vaccinated people can be carriers and transmit. So that's why the program is intended to be a broad surveillance testing program. That brings us to a related item, and these items I wanted to specifically highlight because they're on the agenda tonight, and those have to do with vaccinations and testing. So currently, I checked just this morning, within Westchester County, and most people may already know this, but there's a vaccine tracker on the county website. And as of today, in the zip code 10803, there are 76.5% of the eligible residents with at least one shot towards vaccination. 70.3% of Pelham is fully vaccinated. We are thankful that we have an update on vaccination rates since the fall. You remember on the website, we tracked to about 70%. As of this point in time, 88% of our teachers are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, which is, I think, great news. It's important information for us to get out because I know lots of parents are very concerned about that, rightly so. About 85% of our staff. The elementary numbers really parallel that as well. So looking at those numbers, students are actually in a little bit of a safer environment, a more vaccinated environment when they're in school, which I think is really important to know. So as we're moving forward, and again, there's a letter, a memorandum of agreement with their teachers union on the agenda tonight, and we are foreseeing additional ones for the remainders of the staff. Working in alignment with the direction that the governor has set, in alignment even with some of the neighboring school districts around us, that we're going to be requiring teachers to be vaccinated or to participate in be required to participate in the weekly testing program. I have to really thank them for their partnership. They've really come to the table from the beginning, understanding the value of vaccinations within the school environment. So we're definitely heading in the same direction for our entire staff, and we're hoping to have those agreements in place very soon. But tonight, we'll be asking the board to approve that side letter with our teachers to be vaccinated or to be tested. Additionally, on the agenda, you will see a resolution with kind of a similar approach, and this is actually for high-risk sports. Although sports did start this past week, they had to start this week in order to get the number of practices in prior to the start of the season. Based on our discussions from last year, certainly, and some initial discussions that we've had this year, my sense in my recommendation to the board, and I believe there's consensus on this, is that while we tried a voluntary testing program last year and vaccination wasn't even available to our athletes last spring, vaccination is available now. It's the most important strategy, again, for preventing spread, preventing serious illness, that we want to now add the requirement for those students participating in high-risk sports that they provide proof of vaccination, or they as well will have to face testing on a weekly basis to participate in those programs. So those are on agenda for tonight. Any questions around those before I move on to
I have a
some of the
question.
other items? Yeah, John?
You said before that we were talking about 20% screening testing. Is that 20% of our students or 20% of our students and our faculty?
Students and faculty.
Which is how many people?
2,800 students and about 450 teachers, 450 staff.
So that's 3,250. So 20% of that is 650?
Right, on a weekly basis.
650 on a weekly basis. So of that 650, are we then doing the athletes and the teachers who are not vaccinated or staff that are not
Yes,
vaccinated?
that'll be within that number.
Okay, so that's within that number?
Yeah.
So whatever that number ends up being, 100, let's say?
I doubt it'll be that high, to be honest.
Okay, 75. So then the rest would be the random,
Yes.
okay. I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
how that's working.
Likely elementary.
yeah. And we've got to work with the county, with the testing testing company on the strategy, but that's where our thinking is right now.
Didn't I hear from was it CDC that said up to 10% was what was recommended? So for striving for 20%, we're outdoing what the CDC recommendation is then,
And
right?
yes, that's what the Westchester County Department of Health, as they did their research and planning, that's exactly what they went through. 10 is the minimum, let's aim a little bit higher than
Okay.
that to provide a safer environment.
So I was gonna say, of course, it makes sense that people who are unvaccinated would be tested. But then if we have leftover tests and we know that Delta can be carried by somebody who's vaccinated, there's no reason not to use the rest of the 20% for anybody who steps up who is vaccinated. to be
Exactly,
tested.
and I think we talked about this some with the task force last year, and I think, we'll bring back some of the talking points around it. It is it's a community service, it's in
Right.
everyone's best interest to participate. I think when people are vaccinated, it significantly reduces their chances of having to quarantine. So that I know a lot of people didn't necessarily want to test because they didn't want to end up quarantined. Hopefully, the guidance will take away that disincentive. So the goal really is to continue to get a snapshot of the entire school population on a regular basis.
Yeah, I like it when you frame it as community service. That's
Yeah.
a good way for everyone to think about it.
Very impressed with that 88% number that you mentioned. I didn't recall us having that conversation earlier, and I didn't think it was that high, so I'm very happy with that number. Obviously, want it to go higher, but
Yes,
that's a great number right now, in my opinion.
yeah.
I agree. I think it's very encouraging, and it likely, though, will lead to parents wanting to know if their child's teacher is vaccinated.
Yes, that is a
So,
logical question.
What guidance would you give to parents, and what disclosure
Well, they're not going to like the answer, but you're right, that is exactly the question. On the EEOC guidance, we consulted with our attorneys about this. The EEOC guidance does not allow us to release that information because it's considered someone's private medical
and the
information.
teacher themselves doesn't have to disclose?
No, they don't have to. They certainly could, should they choose. If there are quarantines, I think it will very quickly become evident. But we are not permitted, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately for the individual, unfortunately for the parents who want to know, we are not permitted to tell.
Okay.
And then I gather that we'll also have a clearer sense of what % of our 12 and over population are vaccinated when we do start asking. Obviously, it's voluntary, but if we do have cases in our schools, then
Yeah, and I think
we'll have a
that-
sense of who's
Definitely.
vaccinated and who's not.
And as we send that, that survey out, we will encourage parents to, I know a lot of people don't like to share medical information. In this case, it's incredibly helpful because if your child is not symptomatic, then that will likely get them out of having to be quarantined,
Yeah.
which I think is a huge incentive. We want them in school, we want them participating in extracurriculars and activities, and that's the ticket to being able to do that on a regular basis. Having that information will also expedite the process for us, which just helps the administrators and the nurses and everyone who's involved in having to do all the contact tracing. So helps us out on that side, and certainly helps the child out in that their schooling will not be impacted the same way it was in the past.
And can you talk a little about the coaching surrounding our high-risk sports and what their requirements are, as well as the other people that are non-coaches but are associated with the teams?
Thank you, that's a great question. And actually, I think we may want to tweak the language of the resolution when we get to that tonight. We want to be sure that everyone involved in the team is included in this expectation. So the athletes themselves, the coaches, coaching staff, trainers, volunteer coaches, managers, everyone who is associated with the team in any way within the district program, we want to use that same expectation.
But we have no control over referees or bus drivers or people that are not affiliated with our school.
Or
Yes,
people on other teams.
correct.
Yes.
Or-
On other teams, yes.
Very good, John.
Yep. And again, that's another good reason for vaccination, because you don't know who are playing and what their status is. So
Yeah.
protecting yourself, protecting your teammates, that's, I think, going to
It
really
was
help.
scary enough last year, and we had to close down a number of sports for a period of time
Yeah.
before Delta, you know, so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the mechanics of this. So if we're doing 650 a week testing, that's like 130 a day. Are we setting up something in the schools, or how is that actually happening?
Well, there's going to be a logistics team that we work with once we're assigned a testing partner.
Okay.
From what they're telling us, and actually from some superintendents who have used some of these companies before, the company will provide staff to,
Okay.
basically to manage this.
Yeah.
We will likely have to provide staff to run lists of labels with unique student numbers so that we can maintain confidentiality. I believe it's kind of a pool testing sort of approach, but it is the kind where if a batch comes up with a positive, if labeled correctly, which is going to be our job to create the labeling, then they can track it back to the exact individual that it was so that they know who needs to quarantine.
So it's a big operation on our part, plus whoever our partner is.
Hopefully, the bigger lift is on their side. I think the setting up of the logistics will be a big lift on ours, but I think from what I've been told from colleagues, it's having a really strong process for coding of the vials. That is really the key piece. If we can get that done, then the students themselves, ideally, we're hoping that we can have the vials go home ahead of time and have them due on a certain date. And someone will be there from the company to collect all 600 and however many on our assigned day. Drop them off on your way into school and go on your way. And then results are supposed to come back within 24 hours.
That's a big logistical
They're doing
issue.
this with every school district in the county.
It's great, it's great, it's
With
just,
the exception of one or two.
Yeah.
And then I think the other neighboring counties are also received similar grants, so.
I mean, I'm thrilled that we have something that's non-invasive and you can do it home. Like, it doesn't mean you have to go for an extra 20 minutes or a half hour after school, which hopefully will get better
That'll help
compliance
as well.
then too.
Yeah.
Can't wait for the stories that our kids tell their grandkids, when they had to carry their spit in a cup to school,
yeah.
walking
wow.
up the hill both directions.
Right.
And 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, exactly, with no shoes on.
Barefoot, right.
In the summer.
Yeah.
So a couple other pieces just to toss out there. Certainly, as we've said before, we're looking only to be doing full-time instruction, the business which we're best at. If folks do have a medical situation where a student is medically not able to come to school and needs to stay home, they can speak to their principal and provide the necessary medical documentation. And we do have a process for providing them with tutoring online classes as they qualify. Certainly, parents are able to homeschool as well. We did have an increase in numbers in that last year, but we've seen most of those students return to school this year. So that's great. We're excited to have them back. Quarantining, as we've already talked about, we're going to be sharing more information on that as soon as we get it, and hopefully be able to be in a position to talk knowledgeably about that at next week's staff and parent sessions. Just some more nuts and bolts. These are kind of not in any particular category, but just other things that I think folks would want to know. We will be back full-time, 5 days a week with normal bell schedules, normal start and end time at all schools. Looking to basically have normal approach to grades and assessments. I think it's going to be very key that most of that work is done in school because we had significant issues around monitoring of academic integrity and things like that. We're not alone. That was everywhere. But that's certainly just a function of the environment we're in last year. So we're hoping to do a shift back to more normal. We are looking forward to having our music programs back in a little bit more robust fashion. Distancing will still be needed. Indoors, masks and the instrument covers, et cetera, would still be needed. Outdoors, not, the masking is no longer necessary. We'll still probably maintain at least 3 feet distancing. Practicing outdoors, those types of things. We're hoping, depending on how Delta goes and how the rates of spread go, that we might be able to do some indoor performances at some point in the year, potentially at reduced capacity. We're pleased to do some outdoor things last year, and we're going to definitely continue that. So we're going to have to keep monitoring on that front. And similar, I would say, relates to plays. We are hoping to, again, get our theater programs back into a more typical, and again, as vaccination statuses go, that will help towards, our comfort level with what students are able to do indoors and together. We'd love to think that we can do actual in-person productions this year, and again, with some sort of audience, even if it's family groupings, distanced from one another in the auditorium, things like that. So we're hoping to get some of those more enriching educational experiences back in for our students. Supplies, certainly looking to try to have as little sharing as possible, but I think we also did learn that the disease is not necessarily spread by surfaces. So we don't expect to be having our poor elementary students carry every single belonging back and forth every day. They may still have to bring some supplies back and forth, but hoping to reduce that to a degree. I know this is not going to be popular, but we are also planning to not use the lockers at the middle school and high school for the start of the school year at least. That really cut down on clustering and gathering in the hallways, and those are the times that we have the biggest potential for spread, because the students are just on top of one another, they're pulling their masks down for a break, or to talk, or to eat, or to drink. So at this point, we're starting the year with no locker use at the middle school and high school. Clubs, sports, et cetera. As we know, sports are up and running. We're going to continue to follow the guidance from Section 1 as it comes out and from the state. With clubs, it's largely going to be a little bit more flexibility there based on the advisor and the nature of the clubs. If advisors want to continue with virtual, certainly that makes sense. If they want to do a hybrid approach, so that students maybe who are quarantined versus those who are can participate. If they're comfortable, they could actually move to in-person clubs as well, but again, with attention to masking, distancing, and all the other protocols that we're using in regular classes. Meetings. We're on the cusp of that. We've got some big meetings coming up. Meetings are going to certainly, virtual will continue to be used. We're certainly going to allow some in-person meetings as well. Obviously, if you're indoors, there's going to be a lot more thought to masking, distancing, sign-in sheets, seating charts, things of that nature, so that if we need to contact trace, that we can. I think bringing back the personal connections can be very helpful, whether it's faculty meetings, department meetings, administrative meetings, things like that. So we're going to play it by ear on that as we see the rates in the area go up or go down. We are planning to continue with a few parent meetings virtually. I think we found a lot more participation, and parents reported to us a lot greater accessibility. Planning to continue CSE meetings and 504 meetings held virtually, parent-teacher conferences held virtually, and back-to-school night held virtually this year. For those events, it's also about not having significant numbers of people, congested hallways, and full classrooms. But we also really got a lot of positive feedback on those, that parents were much more able to engage, especially if they were still working. They could take 10 minutes out to do a quick Google Meet with the teacher. They got the information they needed. Middle school and high school, they didn't have to run around. You get lost, and they only have 7 minutes start to finish, no transfer time. So it really actually had a lot of benefits. So we're going to continue with those virtually this year. As far as PTA meetings, our thought right now is, because that is a good, strong partnership function, that we would allow PTA meetings in the schools as long as they had sign-in sheets and seating charts and distancing and masking, et cetera. Virtual meetings also would be great. allowing PTA activities likely outdoors. Still a little hesitant at this point to go further than that indoors with PTA events or any other kinds of events. We'll certainly be allowing rec to do after-school programming, before and after-school childcare to do their programming. They have their own sets of guidance. But we're going to need, again, to continue with some level of restrictions of facility use because we do still have to do all of our cleaning protocols. So we're trying to open the doors a little bit broader, but not, it's not going to be completely back to normal at this point. If there's any, I think I'm just about through those. Let's see if there's any questions. There's probably a lot of things that we haven't tackled. Visitors, we're still going to be restricting visitors, although it may be a little bit more than we had done in the past. Say if there's disciplinary meetings and it's best for a parent to come in and, in person to have some of those difficult conversations. So we'll be having a little bit more flexibility there as the principals see need. Yeah, that actually covered everything on the list. So let me pause there and see if there was any other questions.
Just one. You just conveyed a tremendous amount of information, which
Yes.
is great. Are we going to post this in a bullet point someplace so people can understand?
Yeah, all this is going to be in the parent and staff presentations that we do next week, and the PowerPoints from that
Okay.
will definitely be posting. And we'll be recording those and putting the
Yeah,
videos
okay.
out as well.
I think it might be worth just reiterating the times of the parent meetings again.
Yes,
just-
Tuesday the 31st, there's an 8:30 session and a 6:30 session.
And you're sending those links out shortly,
Yeah,
right, next
yeah.
week?
Those will be coming out, yeah.
So Cheryl, a parent had actually asked me about visiting, and it sounds like, I just suggested that they contact their building principal. So right now, if other parents have questions, that's the best route.
That really is, and a lot of the questions we get are very building specific. So all the administrative team is back as of today, so that I would definitely steer people, that's your best first place to start.
Thanks.
And one of the other pieces I think I forgot to mention, but we'll be discussing with the administrators tomorrow at our retreat, finalizing plans for how we're going to support students in quarantine. We will have some sort of plan for that. I think it's important for folks to know that is not remote instruction. That is not if your child's sick. That is if we quarantine you or the Department of Health quarantines you due to exposure somewhere else, or if you're waiting for results because you have COVID-like symptoms. Really, COVID-related quarantine situation is we're going to provide something for. But it's not going to be what it was last year because we are not having the hybrid model with cameras in the room. So I think folks just need to know, we will have something and we believe it'll be effective, but it's just going to be different than what we had last year. So once we finalize that, that will hopefully be shared next week as well. We should have those plans ready to go by the parent session on Tuesday.
Probably the big takeaway there is there's no remote option.
There is no remote option. Yes. Okay. All right, just a couple more items.
I just wanted to ask. I know we talked, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
Michael, go ahead. Yep.
All right. Just speaking about instruction during quarantine, I know we talked about that a few times and it was talked about in the reopening committee, but I understand you're still finalizing, but there's already been a lot of work put into that and thinking about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right.
And I also just wanted to ask about, because there were students who, for medical reasons or other reasons, are going to stay home this year and be in that medically homebound category. Can you talk just a little bit about what the instruction would be like for them?
Yeah, I'm going to lean on Julia again. So for students who are out, it depends on kind of short-term or long-term. Our primary go-to resource is iTutor. I'll just ask Julia if she could speak to that. There is a potential at the secondary, if need be, that we could also consider online courses available through some of the BOCES across the state and/or Learning Shop, which is another tutoring center locally. But Julia, can you speak to iTutor in particular?
Sure. We've been using iTutor, which is a company that I think a lot of school districts have also started using. They have New York certified teachers. in all content areas. And so what we've been doing for the last couple of years is utilizing them when there is a student who's like on a medical leave. And sometimes when they're in the hospital, there is tutoring at the hospital. And there are agencies that actually provide instruction at the hospital, and then they bill us back. So there are many different ways that that instruction can be available to students. But for this particular situation, if a student has a medical issue that is impacting their ability to come to school, or I guess leave the house, basically, then as long as they can provide us with medical documentation, we can certainly provide that, give them access to iTutor. Again, it is everything online. We also have used Learning Shop, which was in person, and what they would do is they would either go meet the student at the library or stop by the home if there's a parent at home. But for the last year and a half, they've also been providing online instruction. So we have a couple of different ways of providing instruction to the students that cannot come to school.
So, and that would, to Michael's point, that would vary depending upon the length of the time. So if there's a student who's out for the whole year, they may have a different plan than a student who's out for a few months. Is that what you're saying?
I think for secondary students, there is the BOCES option that we might look at
consider.
if they're out the entire year.
Okay.
Typically, if it's a shorter, more temporary, the students actually end up having a schedule in our high school or middle school, and so they would belong to someone's roster. And so like an iTutor would then communicate with the classroom teacher for like the curriculum and whatnot, so that their instruction that they're receiving is kind of parallel to what's happening in the classroom.
I think an important distinction too is the iTutor is one-on-one tutoring with an actual teacher. Versus something like an online coursework that would be more like exactly what it sounds like. A BOCES teacher would likely have a class of students from around the state. So that would not necessarily parallel our curriculum as much. So there's kind of pros and cons to both. The tutoring is a much shorter duration of time in the course of the day because it is one-on-one, so it's a much more intense instructional setting. But it's going to depend a little bit case to case, case by case.
So with an elementary student, I think it was an hour a day of
Yeah.
the tutoring,
Tutoring.
and then how would the student fill the rest of their time during the day?
I would assume that there's probably going to be some of that work that they would do independently, separate from the instructional session. But yeah, that is statewide. That's the regulatory requirement is an hour of instruction a day for homebound instruction. For secondary, it's 2 hours a day. Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on that before we move on? Just a couple more items, I promise.
Are we doing gateway testing?
Yes, that actually would be part of the surveillance testing program, thank you.
I'm sorry,
We-
before we continue, can I just get all the board members to slide your mics forward? We have the mask back on. You need to get a little bit closer to the mic.
Yeah, so the question was, will there be gateway testing with surveillance testing? So that is part of the program. That gateway testing is testing of 100% of the school population. So once we connect with our partner, we'll find out what that will look like. That likely will be during the first week of school. Ideally, it would have been before, but given that we still have not been given the name of that partner by the county, I think getting logistics in place that quickly might be a challenge. But yes, that would be, again, looking for 100% of participation on that. It is technically voluntary, except for those required populations. But we would ask parents in particular to please consent to give us the ability to do that. It'd be a great way to start the year.
And if parents decided to get their own test for their child within a couple days, would that count?
We would accept that, yeah.
Oh, so that's important.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I would say parents are always welcome to get their child tested outside of
Within-
school.
Within 2
Provide
days?
those results
or-
to us. Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't talked to the company yet, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but the goal would be to get 100% of the whole school population tested right within that first week of school. So if you prefer to take your child and just give us the results, that's great, then we won't involve them in the gateway testing. Yeah. That was a great point. Okay, watch for more information on that. Finally, federal funds, just a quick update. We obviously have a couple different buckets of money here, but so far, what we're basically hired to and planning for, and what is being submitted to the state at the moment is we've got 2 psychologists hired and ready to go for next year. We're finalizing that. We had some last minute personnel changes that Dr. Garcia will mention later on in the meeting. We're working to, I think tonight we'll be appointing the 4 interventionists that we're also adding with that funding. We're also going to be looking to hire a building substitute again for each of the schools so that we have extra staff on board in case we do get into quarantine situations and need to have staff to cover. We're currently soliciting for a COVID coordinator, so if anyone knows anyone, ideally we're looking for someone with a nursing background, a medical background, because they will be interfacing with the Department of Health as well as parents who likely will have lots of medical questions. So someone who can work independently, work flexible hours, because as many folks may know from when they got the phone calls last year, often we find out about cases late in the day and occasionally over the weekends. So we're going to need some with flexible hours, but we're looking for that person still, so we would love anyone who'd be interested. You can look on olasjobs.org for that posting. And then also, we're using these funds to cover parts of the summer programming that just was completed. So at the moment, we're budgeted for that to be a total of, let me get the right total. Sorry, Jim, I know you don't have this in front of you. Yeah, it's, if I'm reading this correctly, if the grant proposal total that's going in is just over 800,000, which is a little bit short of our full amount that we have been granted. That's the budgeted amounts. Those will have to be reconciled on the other side. So that's something like the summer programming, for example. We had budgeted in a significant amount more. The board probably remembers that. I think we doubled the amount that we put in the general fund for summer programming. So we're going to be using that money first, and then anything that's not covered by that would go here. So that the summer programming number is something, for example, that likely could carry over for future year for other purposes. So that's kind of where those plans are as we speak.
So Cheryl, I know we've talked about this, but so the federal funds we have to use for COVID-related purposes. So if we have leftover federal funds next year, even if in a perfect world there's no more COVID, we'll still have some expenses left to cover with that money.
Right. Yeah, and I think the goal was for anything that supports getting schools open so students can return, and anything that helps with any sort of learning loss, recovery, and any kind of supports for students, which likely are, in some cases, are not a one-year fix.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, finally, enrollment projections. I think I've shared this with the board as well. We are looking to run 63 sections at this point. So we're going to have 2 sections of K at Colonial, 3 sections of K across all the other schools. That's kind of our usual thing that's always up in the air. So we do think we've got, at this point, we've got enough enrollment to be looking at that. Really happy that most of our class sizes are on the lower side this year. We did have a number of students homeschool, as I mentioned earlier, last year, but they've come back into the system. So we're right now 2,782 is who's currently enrolled and projected to be in our schools in the fall. A lot can change in these last couple weeks, but that's where we stand as of today.
Are any buildings looking like they have capacity issues this year?
No,
Yeah.
no, we're in good shape for this year. I
Right.
think we're at full,
Yeah.
but we're not in any danger anywhere.
Have we seen any indication that people are keeping their kids out of kindergarten this year?
The number in K is a little small again. Last year we were at, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we were at about 175, which was very low. And that same cohort now going into first grade is at 194. So that's 20 students that stayed out, whether it was homeschooling or other options, are now back in the system. Around 200 is our typical cohort size. So yeah, we're at 179 in K. I would guess there are some folks making different decisions for K.
But still not hugely different than what we would expect.
No, it's similar to last year.
At some point, it would be so interesting to, I know there's been so much movement around the country, but to know how our student population shifted one way or another. I know people have moved, but we've also had a lot of people moving in. But
Yeah.
at some point, when the dust settles, to see how this year was impacted, see where we are next year. It's where my mind goes after all those years of the studying the demographic predictions with the bond project.
Yeah.
But
And I think it's actually, Jim mentioned to me recently, it's probably about time for another demographic study.
Yeah.
Definitely it is.
yeah,
Because these numbers are going down.
it's so interesting to compare it to what the projections are too,
Right.
you know?
So that actually ends my report.
Okay, well, it's very informative. So this brings us to 4.3, which is the Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Dr. Garcia.
Yes, good evening, and we'll focus on personnel. Because as you know, over the summer, we have spent a lot of time making sure that we're totally staffed for the next couple of weeks before the kids arrive, which I just want to thank all the parents who've been involved with the process of interviewing our prospective teachers, and the administrators spent a lot of time, obviously, dodging their vacation time to make sure that interviewing teachers and candidates. Students have been in the classroom. We've had some students over the summer, so we had many demo lessons, which is a requirement. Before we hire a teacher, we want to see them in the classroom working with our kids. So just by the numbers, just so you're aware, and I didn't really pay attention to this until yesterday when we looked at the chart. I was thinking that, it's a pretty normal year for a new teacher meeting, which is coming up next week. Maybe we had 11 people, 10 people. Well, since May, when we started hiring for the new year, I just use that as a benchmark. We've hired 27 new certificated staff. That's teachers, that is teaching assistants, could be guidance counselors, school counselors, could be OT, occupational therapists. So since May, 27 new people. There are some people who have been with us previously, maybe some leave replacements, but most of those are new faces. So that's, I think, an exorbitant number, which is not really indication of anything per se. It's just, that's the amount of work that's been done since May. This summer alone, though, 19 people have been hired for our staff. There are 2 positions which are still outstanding that we know we're diligently still in the search process to find those 2 candidates to fulfill those roles. Just by the numbers as well, out of that 27 hires, 12 of them are probationary faculty. Okay, that means that they are people who are filling roles, could be from retirements, could be from some resignations, and also could be new positions which we have. But 12 of those positions are probationary. 6 are, as Dr. Champ mentioned, those year-long appointments, 4 interventionist positions, 2 school psychologists that we went to the last meeting. So there's 6 positions there. And then we have 6 leave replacements at this point that we filled, and also 3 part-time teachers, which we reappointed. One of them we actually found that's new. So those are pretty much the numbers which we're at. Like I said, we're just looking for 2 more positions to fill, which, to be honest with you, with basically almost 2 weeks to go, that's not bad. We've hired people over Labor Day weekend before. I always talk about that Susan Gilbert story that we had a few years ago where we hired a teacher over that weekend. So I just want to say, again, thank you to all the administrators and the parents and the teachers and the children who are helping us find those teachers. Any questions or thoughts? We do have new teacher meeting. We have a mentor meeting with our new teachers on next Monday. Some of it's virtual, and hopefully in the afternoon we'll welcome them all into the campus.
I'm sorry if you said this and I
Yes.
missed it, but the 2 openings are,
One is still the school psychologist is in process
Okay.
for a colonial school, and also the social worker leave replacement is still in process. And I know that Julia's team is working diligently to try to fill them.
For the high school.
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so 4.4 is Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child. Ms. Chung.
Hi again. So as we're looking forward to the first day of school, we have some orientations planned, especially for those transition years that I know everyone has been very worried about in terms of students coming back. So we have our 6th grade and 9th grade orientations planned on Friday, Monday. This year, the counseling office actually also planned a 10th grade social. As you know, we have in the counseling department 9th grade counselor, and then we have counselors for 10 through 12. And one of the things that we haven't done before is really create an opportunity for the 10th graders to meet their new counselor. So that's what they're doing this year. Next Tuesday, they're having I think an ice cream social so that they can meet their new counselor. And I know 10th grade was 10th grade was something that we were worried about during the last school year because they didn't get a chance to really acclimate to the high school. So that's the additional orientation that they're doing. In special education, as Dr. Champ mentioned earlier, we are planning on continuing with the CSE and 504 meetings virtually, because I do think that it was easier for parents to be able to kind of just click on and then join the meeting and continue on with their day. So we're definitely doing that. Dr. Rivero, Mr. Lau, and I actually, we met with the new SEPTA presidents, Ms. Stephanie Otero and Ms. Joanne Colon. We had a really nice conversation about our goals for this year, and we have a welcome back meeting on Thursday, September 23rd. And I think typically what we do is we meet in the middle school library in the hallway, but I think they've also found that the attendance was much higher when it was done virtually. So I think they're planning on having the meeting virtually. So, but we're looking forward to that meeting. It's just a welcome back meeting just to get to know each other. So we hope to see a lot of our parents there. In terms of social emotional learning, we have another group of elementary school teachers getting trained this year for responsive classroom. The first 2 days are happening next week, next Tuesday and Friday, so that's very exciting. We have all of our new psychologists and also the interventionists. Everyone's going to participate so that everybody's using the same responsive classroom training language. So that's going to be very helpful. And in the middle and high school, we're going to be implementing to universal DBT this school year. So that's going to be delivered through the health teachers. They were trained last school year, and so we're going to implement that this year.
Julia, is there any more teacher training required for the universal DBT, or is everyone? Sure. Does anyone else still need to be trained for DBT?
For DBT or the universal DBT?
Universal DBT.
No, we had our health teachers train last year. So we just need to do the implementation this year, figure out how often we're going to do the lessons. The other part of the implementation also requires the entire faculty from middle and high school to understand what it is, because we want to make sure that the language that they're using with the students, it is also similar, kind of like responsive classroom. There's a specific language that they use. So we want to make sure that our middle and high school teachers, the entire faculty, that they also understand what we're trying to implement. So that's going to happen in October during the faculty meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, 4.5, Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities, Mr. Ricky.
Hi, and good evening. We've been busy this summer with the finance and facilities, just to kind of give everybody a quick up-to-date on where we are right now. Certainly, as you drive past the high school, you can see that the front of the school is still having a significant amount of work being done right now. And for the beginning of the school year, that scaffold will be in place, but that entrance is fully accessible. What we've done is, with that work, the cast stone has been removed and is being replicated at this point in time. We also were we were informed that there needs to be some steel replaced on the front in the tower area, so we're waiting on the pricing for that. You only take it apart every 100 years or so. You want to make sure you do it right, and we're going to go ahead and do that. The work on the science, research, and physics rooms are finishing up right now, which is terrific. We're just waiting on some casework in one of those rooms. If that does not come in the time before school starts, we certainly still have the ability to start the school year, and we'll be in good shape there. The high school art room and orchestra rooms, as you probably walked by today, they still require quite a bit of work, and we've been told that they'll be ready. It'll be another miracle if we have it. Certainly they need
Thank
floors, they
goodness
need
school doesn't
ceilings,
start
they
till
need
September
lights, they need casework. We are working hard and pushing hard with our construction manager and sharing with them our concerns, and we have been doing that as we're moving along. We also had to rehabilitate a couple of rooms by district staff. I'm pleasantly able to report that one of those rooms is just about completed, and the other one we're finishing up on now as well. So special thanks, of course, to our maintenance mechanics who were able to do that work this summer. At the middle school.
Sorry, this may be a very detailed question, but do we have a backup plan for everything that's in the hallway if those rooms don't get done? Because I imagine it's a fire hazard and a crowding hazard.
Yes. At this time, we've been told that all the work will be done by
Fair
the
enough.
beginning of the school.
Okay.
You'll cross that bridge when you get there, right?
Or jump off of it. We'll cross it or jump off the bridge when we
Yep.
get to it.
Got it.
The middle school masonry work was completed, and we had a large degree of work that was needed. There was also a number of additional work that was identified. At this point in time, the budget permitted us, we're able to do some of that additional work. It's a good time to do that. We don't want the building to get any wetter. So we're fortunate in that that work was ongoing, and you still see that lift there. At Prospect Hill, they've been rehabilitating the bathrooms. They are completing the tile work, they're completing the ceilings, they're completing the painting, they're completing the plumbing, and they're still working on the electrical. We're waiting for them to complete one whole bathroom. Again, we've been told that they'll be functional and available by the first day of school. The addition is moving a little bit slower, obviously. We want to see that keep on moving, but for the opening of school, that's of less concern to us. And we probably would expect to see that in the springtime of '22. And the Prospect Hill field is still currently on hold. We had a permitting issue with regard to the Department of Health and the irrigation system, and from Suez. So we're still waiting on that final permit to come through. Once we get that, we would expect that work to move forward. The biggest project, of course, is Hutchinson School, and every day it certainly looks better. We've got more paving coming through. We've got new sidewalks which have been installed. The furniture is just about 100% complete and installed. There's still quite a bit of checklist or punch list items that are going to have to be done. The elevator is functional. Again, we're working hard with the contractor, trying to create a sense of urgency, and I know the construction manager is doing that as well to make sure we can get everything taken care of. There will be activity there this weekend. I would anticipate there being activity next weekend. We want to get all of our teachers' boxes into their classrooms so they can get to work and do what they need to do next Wednesday. And we've got our inspection for temporary certificate of occupancy for Tuesday, so that we can get our staff in, and then for our full occupancy, certificate of occupancy, the day after Labor Day. So they're still working on the fire control systems and everything else, and the building control systems. So they're moving forward there too. Again, it's a large project, as you know, and a lot of coordination of efforts. So that still is ongoing.
Just a question, Jim.
Yes.
So all the interiors are clean to the point where teachers can move in?
At the upstairs, we have it we were able to address the floors, seal all the floors at the upstairs classrooms. Furniture is placed in all of the classrooms. All the furniture is installed, and some of it's being. I was there on Monday last, so at that point in time, some of it was being their finish assembly for those pieces of furniture. They were finishing on the gym floor, the sanding of the gym floor, so they're going to put a sealer coat down, put down all of the game lines, and they'll be sealing that this week as well. And right now, the other color of the terrazzo in the front door, in the front entryway, that came in this week, so they're doing that now as well.
So does that mean the staircase as well?
The steps for this terrazzo for the staircase have been delayed. And for the beginning of the school year, we will have to have temporary treads in place. We were told they would come by the contractor. We were told they'd come at the end of August. Now they're sharing with us that it's probably the middle of September.
Yeah.
So we are working on temporary treads because you need that center staircase for full occupancy of the building. But-
Any other material or delays in materials or systems that might impact us?
At this point in time, the terrazzo was the big one, because again, the other terrazzo tile in the front entryway is being installed this week. We had the white terrazzo, and then there's an off-white color that's going in right now. It seems to be going in a lot faster than the first one, so that's good to see.
Jim, the dividing wall between the double fifth grade classroom?
That was supposed to come in this week. They put a rush on that. If that dividing wall is not in place, we've asked them to place a temporary partition so that we have that, we can have those two rooms separate. They really are not, they really don't want to do that for obvious reasons, for cost reasons. So they are pushing to have that temporary door put in there. And then we're also working on licensing with Westchester County for the kitchen. It's not going to be a food preparation space to start with, but we want to make sure it's permitted at the beginning of the year, too.
So, kind of, John, to one of your questions, right, we're not able to move teachers in as of yet, because we haven't gotten a partial,
A temporary certificate. of
Temporary.
occupancy.
yeah.
No, I understand that. It's a question about being able to move them. It's a question of whether the space is ready for them to move in.
We,
Close, but not quite.
yes, today it's not ready, tomorrow it won't be ready. We've told them it needs to be ready on Wednesday. That Wednesday is the first day that our staff comes in, and we need to be ready so that they can come in and get their rooms ready, because they've got their students coming in the following week.
So do we have our own cleaning crews? Are we hiring cleaning crews?
So part of the turnover is we've worked with the contractor. The contractor is supposed to turn over every room clean. First few were probably not as clean as we'd expect them to be.
Contractor clean and school clean
Yeah.
are two different things.
Absolutely. So we explained to them our expectation, shared with them that if that doesn't meet our expectation, we would bill it back. Since that has happened, we've had those rooms delivered in a much better condition. And then once they're sealing the floors, they're getting those rooms taken care of, they're closing the doors to minimize traffic in those areas. So the upper floor, there's very little contractor traffic right now. On the first floor, you see most of the contractor traffic in the cafeteria area, in the front entryway area, and in the gymnasium area. That's kind of where a lot of it's been. And then the final casework going in. So they have to do some plumbing in a lot of the rooms where there's smaller sinks and things like that.
We'll see it on the first.
We will.
You think you'll have the TCO on Wednesday?
That's our expectation,
Wow.
and that's our push.
Well,
What
TCO,
happens-
TCO by Tuesday, so we can occupy on Wednesday for staff.
it's not like the city. Where, that would be a really big lift.
That would be a non-fact.
I think it was good this week. We had the elevator vendor, the alarm vendor, our HVAC vendor. We had everybody in this week, kind of running through exactly what still needs to be done.
We're out of the ceilings, all right?
Yes, yes. And then, of course, this weekend was a great opportunity to check the weather tightness of some of the areas. And we took on some water in a couple of different areas. We've identified that, but really nothing major, which is also good to see.
Just when's the latest the TCO would have to be in place before jeopardizing first day of school?
Well, I would say, again, we need, your teachers need, I would guess, a minimum of 2 days to set up their rooms.
And
Would
ideally,
that be
they
fair?
would be in this week,
Yeah,
worst case, next week. So, yeah, Wednesday's pushing.
Yeah, and are they working this weekend?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And they're working and we're working, because we want to make sure all the materials and supplies for our staff are in their rooms.
Yep.
So as soon as they're done, we're pushing into those areas, and we want to be able to finish the floors on the first floor as well. So we're pushing hard, but it's a big project, obviously, as you know.
And is there any leverage the board can assert? Like, do you have what you need to ensure the appropriate level of pressure is on?
Thank you. I do think that everyone is fully aware of what our deadline is, and when we need to open the
Yeah.
school.
But
It's,
do they face penalties for late delivery?
No. Yeah, when you do that, sometimes you pay more on your bid because they'll build in a penalty into the bid for the project.
Yeah, but it's a,
I don't
It's a
think-
push and a pull, and I think a lot of contractors know when the opening day is, and they work to that day. So we're gonna get there. We're gonna pull ourselves across that finish line, and that's our goal, to get it taken
Yep.
care of.
Jim, this doesn't pertain to opening day, but as a board, we decided to benchmark the building against LEED Silver standards. Is that just something that, I know we identified the checklist to ensure that we could get there. Is that just something that they've been keeping up with as construction's gone on? Or what does the process look like once the building's complete? What plans do we have to sort of advertise that or ensure that we're where we need to be?
Sure. My understanding, and I'll confirm this with KG&D, the architect, all of those specifications were designed into the building. If you look into where, for instance, if you look into where the staff parking area is going to be, there's an electric recharging station is already there, and some of the other energy efficiency items are in the building. My understanding is that the consultant they used will then come at the conclusion of the construction and validate that we've met that standard that they set. Again, we're not going to apply for that LEED.
Right, because there was a
but we
big
wanna
cost
meet it.
associated.
Exactly.
Is there anything that we plan to do to mark that on the building somewhere? I know we're not going to have the LEED plaque, but,
Could say almost LEED.
yeah, I don't know. Or is there some,
As good
You
as
can't really
LEED.
You can't
commit
say it.
unless you go for the full
Yeah.
certification, but that was the agreement that we struck with the bond steering committee
the-
and the
the-
architects that.
Yeah, the LEED process relies on monitoring during construction. That's part of the big price of it. You pay someone to look at all the submittals and shop drawings and do this, that, and the other thing. So that's the part that you don't do.
right,
So, but all the design requirements and the design parameters, the commissioning is still part of the process. So you get the benefit of the actual, lead thinking, if you will, without paying the cost of all the monitoring that goes into it, an actual certification. So sort of simplistically put, but,
it seems like there could be a place where it's not in the building, but just on our website or, just to ensure people know. I mean, we went to great lengths to ensure that happened.
There's language that we used during the bond steering deliberations, and I'm sure that we can, say that it was built to certain specifications, but we can't claim that it's a full.
Yeah, it's definitely
certified.
not.
John, I know Jordana is the consultant that was overseeing the lead work.
right.
Would a consultant like that typically produce some kind of report once the commissioning and all of her work and consulting is
Well, yeah, it's a process that goes through the
checklist?
Green Building, the lead council. It's an organization you actually interact with during the construction process, so she hasn't been doing that. But I suppose she'll issue a report if we ask her to. I don't know what our agreement with her is.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm picturing that document that we were looking at one point where it showed how many points you could get for
Yeah.
Yes.
different things. I'm just wondering if maybe an update of that.
Well, that's a good idea.
Totally.
That's a good
We
idea.
can cover the bases.
We have
Where we
all
got
that.
Yeah.
We have
where
the
we got
points.
the lead points.
Yeah, and it may be a little while after construction is completed, because there are things that, we discussed and.
Yeah, there's a cistern,
Right,
which would be
yeah.
in there.
Oh, right. It won't be done till the end of site work.
Right, so, and, yeah, exactly, in fields and things like that, so I'm not sure if any of that has
Points.
anything happened, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not the priority, it is a part of the completion, which is why I
Get the
asked
old
it.
building down, the new one open, and then we can,
Yeah.
yeah.
We need to
So-
get classrooms open first.
I had another question, because it was a question that was put to me by a representative of the Pelham Preservation Society, who was very concerned about the reconstruction of the high school entrance. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're removing all of the precast pieces from the facade. We're replicating them in terms of exact profile, right? And then we're putting the new pieces back on the building in exactly the same way as the old pieces were.
Yes, that's exactly my understanding as well.
So when all is said and done, it should look exactly the way it did look, but new.
Yes, and
So-
watertight.
And watertight.
Hopefully.
Apparently some new steel, which we didn't.
So it won't have the crumbly edges and the discolored stone. It'll look clean and new. And I know people associate that with looking not realistic, but in actuality, we're actually replicating it precisely the way it was.
Yes, and actually, when they were doing the work, I happened to be there one day, and they were winching down those pieces very carefully, and then they send them off to
Yeah.
to an organization, a company that replicates
Yeah,
them.
they measure,
Yes.
and they make a form, and they make a new one.
Yeah,
So this has been designed, overseen by a historical consultant who specializes in the restoration of historical buildings.
so we gave I think the same person who reached out to you, reached out to us, and we asked our architect to speak with her, and I believe he
Okay.
has. So, which is good, I mean.
That's fine, it was
Yeah.
a good question, and if people weren't following it, and who does, right?
Right.
But then they see all this work happening, and they're like, geez, what's going on here? And so they reached out, that's fine.
As it's been explained to me.
So make sure we're saying the same thing.
And those stones, when they come down, as I understand it, they're very careful with where they pull them from, and they identify where they come, and they want to make sure they put them back in the same place when they rebuild those areas.
Well, it's
as
like the
much as
rubble
they
masonry
can.
on the outside of the building, they actually take pictures of it,
Yep,
and they take it down, and they number it, and they put it back up.
yeah.
So,
It's very exacting work when
Yeah.
when they have to do that. And you're right, and this helps us make sure that it doesn't crumble over the next 100 years.
yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because, obviously if there are that's a question in people's minds out there, so.
It's in the center of the community, everybody sees it, and it's a very good question, too.
Yep.
In addition to our construction of 4 out of 6 of our buildings, we've managed to have summer camp and accommodate our town recreation this summer, which was really terrific. We also had our external audit completed. Again, thanks to everyone in the district for helping us get to that point. We are really one of the first school districts in the region that has that external audit completed. Again, our fiscal year ends June 30th. And on June 12th, we were ready for the audit. So really, that's about 7 business days, which is just tremendous work in making sure that we're able to do that. We're waiting for the final reports, but we can certainly tell you we have a clean audit. And that final report will be reported to you and to the audit committee before the end of September, because that needs to be approved and reported to the state before the end of September. So again, great work there. This evening, in addition, you see there are a number of budget transfers that we're requesting, and some of that is related to the closing out of last year. And as we look at those things, I'm sure it kind of raises an eyebrow, and you'd say, wow, that seems like quite a bit. And some of it was for an end-of-year items. And we were identifying some transfers that we needed during the year. But some of these things came up as part of the end of the year. For instance, we had some vacation buyouts, which we hadn't budgeted for at the beginning of the year, which were part of collective bargaining agreements made at year end. Certainly that required some transfers. We had an unanticipated tuition payment at year end. We had a custodial overtime that we were covering. We knew that was coming. We had, beginning of the year, our substitute run was pretty low, and we had transferred some money out of that line. Second half of the year, it picked up, and that makes sense because we had more in-person classes in the second half of the year. But with that, we needed to make that adjustment at year end. And then we had some people who the school year ended at the end of June, but there was still some time, like our guidance counselors do some per diem work over the summer, and some of it do them right at the end of the school year. There's a couple of days they put in, or they can do it in July. It's kind of at their pleasure. So some of them did it right at the end of June, and that's kind of where we had some of those transfers. So we're able to cover all of those transfers. I'm sorry, there's 2 others. One was an accounting request, a charge request for a band payment, which was related to our debt service shared with us by our auditors, and the other were performance awards. So again, these were all kind of there's some typical transfers at the end of the year, generally not at this level, but the reason they were at this level was for these reasons. So just wanted to provide some insight to that for you. And then this year, we have another one too. We do have a leave of absence coming up for a speech and language pathologist, and we're going to be covering that, at least in the interim, with the use of a private firm to cover it in the meantime. So we're just going to be transferring some monies from a salary line to a contracted services line, and that's the second one that you see there as far as those two transfers go. We're asking you to approve the safety, the district-wide safety plan this evening. There were some minor changes that were made from the last meeting that were identified by Altiris, our safety and security consultant. And there were changes that were made just this evening. And thank you, Board Member Tabaz. We had one item, it kind of looked like, the technical term I think is gobbledygook. When we transferred it from Word to PDF, the translation turned into gobbledygook. So we've made that correction, and we've uploaded the new file into Board Docs. And we've also had some personnel changes, and that's what happens during the year, and we will make those changes. In this instance, the notable one is certainly the board member on committee that will be on the safety committee, as well as more recently, our food services director is retiring at the end of the month from Whitson's. And once that new person is identified, we'll also put them in that district-wide safety plan. So things change, but thank you for letting us know. And I don't believe we received any comments on that either. But again, this is all part of our SAVE legislation, which is put in place, and we have to do this every year. There's just a couple other smaller items for the board to accept notification of change orders related to some of these capital projects. Again, some of these capital projects for thresholds of less than $50,000 can be approved by the superintendent up to $50,000 or up to $25,000 for myself. The purpose of these items are so that we can keep construction moving on these items with the provision that we notify the board at the next meeting. And that's what we're doing here. Again, keeping with that resolution that the board has in place. And we didn't hire 29 plus people this summer. Extraordinary work from Dr. Garcia's group. We got about 11 people. And certainly thank you to a 21-year veteran of the Pelham schools as an employee, Michael Klein, our head custodian at Siwanai Schools. Mike has taken a position in another district. It's a terrific position for him, a great opportunity. We're very excited for him, but at the same time, we will certainly miss him. And again, Mike grew up in Pelham, still lives in Pelham, and gave us 21 great years. So we're very grateful for that. Really nice man, and he's a friend of mine. So we certainly will miss him. And with that,
Jim?
I think I'm done.
Well, can I ask a question? You were
Yes.
on a roll before. I didn't want to interrupt you. Prospect Hill
Yes.
Field.
Yes.
Okay, we've got delays in it.
Yep.
When do you anticipate those delays and approvals being done, finished? That being said, as a second part of the question, as you know, the fall is very busy at Prospect Hill with rec soccer and travel soccer. You know, when were you looking to then start the field work? Because then you get into the spring where you've got Little League and everything else at that field. What's your timing?
Thank you. And that's a good point. The last we asked, and we understand that the permitting should be coming through very shortly,
Right.
which is good.
Which is what I thought, so that's
Yeah.
spurred the question.
Absolutely. And the last I asked, as we understood it, we know we were going to lose the fall. We knew we were going to lose the spring on that field, because that field is going to have to grow and knit, and probably maybe some of the early summer. As I understand it, we're still kind of on that timeline if we're able to complete that work in the relatively near future, so that it would be out of service again, according to the schedule. It would be out of service this fall and the spring and probably the early summer of next year.
And our rec commission knows that?
We've not shared with them any change in the schedule, so with that, we can certainly communicate with them.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea.
No, absolutely. We've made a great point. With recreation, we started with the staff. We just tried to have quarterly meetings, regular quarterly meetings, kind of talk about the past, present, and future, and help us kind of crystal ball things and see where we are. And it really helps us with that planning, especially as we move forward with the new facilities and fields coming in and out of service.
Absolutely. We'd
Yeah.
like to have a nice relationship with them.
Absolutely. No, we had a great summer. And we know they got great use of the facilities. It kind of puts us in a pinch with getting facilities ready right now. But we know the kids in the community were able to use it, and that's really positive.
So, Jim, I'm assuming that your allusion to issues with the health department has to do with the water connection for the irrigation?
Yes.
But we could put the irrigation in and wait till we get approval to connect it. I mean, I'm not sure why that would hold up the work.
Again, I was told that was the purpose of the holdup, and that's why the contractor was not moving forward. I can ask.
Is that Casal's?
It is. It is. And we've got them on site at Hutchinson now, too. so-
No, I know.
Yeah.
Is it a Pelham Manor issue too?
I don't believe this is.
No,
Okay.
you have to get permission from the county to connect to the water
Yeah,
system.
I know, but,
Yeah, with Suez Water and then with the county.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
okay.
multiple jurisdictions, they need a
writing
prepayment. There's,
What's that?
They're probably busy writing guidance for schools.
Oh, yeah.
My guess is they're busy everywhere else but Pelham. So, but they could be doing the work. They could be. They should start it.
John, you're saying lay everything and then just wait for the hookup.
do the final hookup.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the permission is for.
Right.
And when does the field at the new school come online in terms of the overall demolition, and when do we get a baseball field back again?
So I would say you're probably looking at least a year
Okay.
time frame for that.
From now, like next
Yes.
fall we would have, okay.
That's probably
That's
optimistic.
Maybe done.
Okay, so
Yeah.
first spring, a year from spring baseball.
Spring '23, maybe.
Yeah.
That's probably a good guess.
It's
So that's not a
probably-
solution for having Prospect Hill offline.
No, unfortunately.
When does the hutch go boom?
It never goes.
There's no more booms.
No boom.
That was 2 summers ago.
But they're on track with the,
Yeah, they've done the asbestos.
with the demo and the abatement and all
So
that
they've done the
stuff.
soft demolition, they were gonna do some probing on the
If
exterior
only.
this week to see if there was more on the exterior. And I have not yet heard the results on that, but I understood that was gonna happen on Monday or Tuesday of this week to see if there was more. Some of that soft demo's already done. We're still holding some materials in the building on the ground floor. We've kind of moved everything down to the ground floor. We've got a great team of people, and our seasonal custodians did a great job.
And they
too.
saved the stained glass window?
I don't know that.
Okay.
It's still in place.
They were going, that was the plan,
That was a
right?
try, yeah, I think they've got a binder of things that I
Okay.
think have to
right.
be addressed.
Just checking.
We've shared that with Triton
I
and
know.
all parties.
Is
Thank
the-
you.
Is the demo contractor trying to salvage stuff out of that building?
They're gonna start wood salvage next week.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone in and kind of picked the bones and taken what we've wanted and needed out of there. And certainly some of the furniture, and we've put a lot of the classroom furniture in a tractor trailer, go in a trailer, and we're holding that.
Copper piping and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I imagine that's just, contractor hasn't pulled any of that yet. They haven't gone behind the walls yet. They've done the asbestos that was identified in the bid. They're looking again at the exterior right now, and then we'll see where they are from there. It's capital construction and demolition. They pretty much do, if you look around, you'll see their name pretty much all over the county right now. Seems like they're knocking stuff down everywhere.
Okay.
And they've got a hockey stick in their logo, so, you know.
Is that good?
I think in this town it is good.
It's not bad.
Vinnie won't argue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So this brings us to section 5, which is financial reports and motions. I'd like to take a consent of 5.1 to 5.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Vinnie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I'd like to take a moment. So in this is our Board of Education meeting schedule, our Board of Education goals, our Board of Education communication protocols, and our Board of Education committee roles and responsibilities. I wanted just to take a moment to read out loud our goals for the year. So these are the Board of Education goals for the 2021-2022 school year. It reads, aligning with our commitment to fiscal responsibility, our mission, and the district vision, which emphasizes high expectations, creative and critical thinking, sense of belonging, and continuous improvement, the board and superintendent will focus on the following systemic goal areas. 1, prioritize the highest quality, full-time, in-person education possible for all Pelham students, supporting their physical and emotional health while balancing the safety needs of students and staff as we continue to work within the context of the pandemic. 2, work to renew our student-centered, high-achieving academic culture after the challenges of 2020-2021 by deepening our relationships, connections, and networks of support with and for students and staff. Return to multiple avenues of communication and in-person engagement with our greater Pelham community. 3, oversee implementation of the district strategic plan, including updated action plans to support specific, meaningful, and observable outcomes in the following strategic goal areas: cultural competence, to cultivate an empathetic, inclusive, and equitable school community that values and encourages respect, voice, and agency for all students. Authentic learning, develop innovative problem solvers, critical and creative thinkers, effective communicators, and strong collaborators who can apply their knowledge and skills to navigate real-world challenges. Whole child, deepen our systemic, academic, and social emotional supports for the health, safety, and well-being of the whole child, recognizing that our learners need to balance academic, physical, social, and emotional demands.
Was the word in person or words in person in that first bullet point?
Yes,
So you said that? Okay.
highest quality, full-time, in-person education.
Got
And as you can see, I lifted that when I had my opening remarks.
For sure.
Is there any questions or comments about these 4 items? I know we spent a lot of time at our board retreat
We did.
ensuring that it was a collaborative team effort, but,
It's a good effort.
okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'm going to take 5.5 all on its own. This is the motion to approve high-risk fall sports at the middle school and high school. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Benny. Any questions or comments?
Were we modifying the language to be more inclusive?
Thank
Yes.
you for reminding me. So, I think right now as the language reads, it references coaches and players, correct?
Yeah,
But we
Student athlete and
student
coach, it
athletes
says.
and coaches, so we want that to be a little bit more all-encompassing of anybody involved with our sports program.
Right.
Trainers,
I
Well,
think
any
that's a-
support staff that has contact with students, right?
I think that's the best way, because that way we
Yeah.
don't miss a title.
Exactly,
Yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
definition.
Okay, so Pauline, we would be doing that, it's the second to last, be it further resolved. Each student, athlete, coach, and support staff connected with the programs.
Yeah, or parents, because parents are involved too, right? Or do we require that or no?
They're not usually involved kind of
No.
on the field or on the buses or
Yeah.
anything like
Okay.
that.
If they're
Um,
volunteering,
yeah.
they would formally be connected.
Okay. I'm not trying to wordsmith here.
and this includes the mandate for proof of vaccination or participate in the weekly testing.
Correct.
Any questions or comments?
And I would just say, obviously, we don't have the testing program set up yet, but as soon as we do, participation in gateway testing, and then weekly thereafter
Perfect.
would be included.
I just want to say one thing about that. Because it does, it's titled high-risk sports, sounds kind of alarming. But I think we are taking appropriate mitigation steps, with testing and requiring vaccination. And we've heard from students that it's really important for their mental health. That's one of their main supports outside the classroom. So I think it's right for us to prioritize it.
Yeah, I think the high-risk designation came down from above, basically.
Yeah, we were just paralleling the language that was used this past spring.
Yeah, I mean, there was discussion at our retreat about maybe expanding this to other areas, which we thought we would take up once we got the sports going, because that was a critical thing. Maybe that's what Michael's alluding to.
Cheryl, I'm confused now that Michael brought up the term. So you listed out all the sports at the beginning that were running this fall, including cross-country.
Yes.
is that included in this group of
No.
high-risk
No.
sports? So it's
No.
only volleyball, football?
It's those sports
Well, yeah.
identified by the state.
The ones yeah. The ones that are listed in here are specifically the ones that we're talking about. Boys varsity and modified football,
Cheerleading and volleyball?
girls, there's JV football as well. Pauline, we might need to make that correction too.
So with the other sports, these
Girls'
rules that we're setting do not apply?
Correct. We would expect all athletes to participate in the voluntary testing program, but this would be requiring students participating in these particular sports
Right.
to test weekly if they're not vaccinated.
Right, and this came up only because the state was requiring.
I understand that. I just wanted to clarify for the conversation that we're only talking about the specific sports that are mentioned in this paragraph and not all of the fall sports that you mentioned at the beginning when you were
Yes.
talking about sports coming back online.
Correct.
Although we would encourage anyone participating in any sport or even just coming to school
Yes,
to follow the same rules.
correct. And I would say state ed has recommended that students participating in high-risk sports be vaccinated.
They certainly have.
Yes,
And to that extent, we're requiring vaccination or testing for only high-risk sports.
correct.
So,
And I think an important fact that folks may want to know too, when we consulted with legal counsel, school districts are not in a position to be able to mandate student testing. That is
Right.
outside of our authority. In this case, we're mandating it with the ability to do testing in lieu of it. So that's why we're able to do this, but we can't, we don't have the authority to say high-risk sports participants must be vaccinated. Because we don't have the authority to mandate any student.
no, yes.
I
You
think
meant
it's important.
mandating vaccine shots.
I'm sorry.
We don't have
Vaccines.
the authority to mandate vaccines
Vaccines.
because New York State hasn't said that students are required to have a vaccine to attend school.
We're not required to mandate vaccines for any student ever at the district level.
Right.
That's always been and
Comes
continues
from
to
above.
be a state level.
And that's the reason why,
Authority.
because New York State has to be the one mandating
Yes,
the requirement of vaccines
for students.
to, as a requirement for attending school.
Correct, correct. But in this case, because we're doing it with testing as an alternative, we're able to do it.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Now that we voted for it, I would like to make a comment, which is that this list is somewhat arbitrary, and we might want to consider as a board expanding this to other activities and other sports. Soccer's not on here.
Which is, I think, what you were referring to, that we
Right.
did discuss that a little bit at the, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so doing great with all the state high-risk sports, but soccer's not there, so I remember it being fairly high risk.
And in that, I remember when this came up last year, that everyone was a little mystified at,
Yeah,
you know,
What was in, what was out.
volleyball is, but soccer is not, and,
Yeah.
you know, there was just some, not a lot of logical consistency, but again, these came from
Other authorities.
other authorities at the time, so
Yeah, no,
paralleling the language has been given.
Yeah.
We do expect that there may be updates to high-risk sports from the Department of Health as well, related to quarantine, potentially related to vaccine, maybe clarification around this as well.
Well, I thought it was interesting that SED recommended mandated vaccines for high-risk sports when we couldn't actually
Yes.
mandate
They
vaccines.
themselves know that we don't have the authority to do that.
It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess this parallels the CDC recommendations or concerns about high-risk sports too.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, I think that's where it comes from. Yeah, so we will be having, now this has been passed, Mr. Hodge will be working with his coaches to start collecting proof of vaccination. So parents can expect that to be rolling out, information about that rolling out as soon as tomorrow. And then once we get our testing partner in place, anyone who's not vaccinated will be looking for consent forms to be submitted for students to continue their participation.
And to John's point, this is just for the fall, so this will be coming back for
Like
other
in
seasons,
December.
This is just for the
Yeah.
fall.
as well
I-
as other activities.
I would be interested in Mr. Hodges' opinion about what might be also included on this list.
Can certainly have him provide some more
I
information.
bet you he has an opinion on it, too.
Okay, next I'd like to take a consent of 5.6 through 5.9. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Leah. So these are the treasurer reports and the budget transfers that Mr. Ricky mentioned. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, I'd like to take 5.10 by itself. This is the motion to approve and accept the Pelham Public School District-wide School Safety Plan. Do I have a motion?
So,
Thanks, John. Thanks, Vinnie. So we had the public hearing at our last meeting. We made a couple of changes based on Alteris's suggestions and Ms. Tabaz's typo edits. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'd like to take a consent of 5.11 to 5.17. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Leah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Vinnie. So this is a variety of different agreements. The motion to award a turf maintenance bid, a couple
Sorry, we're
of,
going up to 5.17. correct?
Yes.
Right, okay.
motion to accept a couple of change orders at the new school and at the high school. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to take 5.18 all by itself. It's a motion to dispose equipment.
they got any good stuff here?
Do I have a motion? I know.
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Second, anybody for microscopes? Thanks, Vinnie. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to take 5.19 to 5.20 as a consent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Leah. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Ian. So this is our motion to enter into an agreement with Little Flower Yoga and also the MOA with the teachers union about vaccines and testing. Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to say that the Little Flower yoga training for teachers sounds really great, and I hope
Can
that
we
it's-
participate?
I hope that it's helpful and effective
Yeah.
for everyone.
And actually, we, part of the work for this year is continuing to take care of the mental health and wellness of everyone. And so this was something we know was very successful in the past. And I think providing mindfulness sessions for those teachers who want to access it, we think will be very helpful. So we're going to start with a session on one of our superintendent's conference days to kick things off. So we're very thrilled to be working with Little Flower again.
It
And
looks
just
important. Go ahead, Deanne.
Just to reiterate, 520 is vaccine or testing,
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Weekly.
correct.
I was just going to say, I think as parents, we all appreciate that if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of our children, and we could not expect our teachers to be any different. So I'm grateful for this program.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the last item is 5.21. It's a motion to accept a donation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Vinnie. So this is a donation of a Yamaha flute for the orchestra program at the Pelham Middle School and Pelham Memorial High School, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, Candace Medenica. Medenica. I read it before, and it seemed to make better sense than when I just read it now. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 6 is the superintendent's personnel recommendations. I'd like to take a consent of 6.1 to 6.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Vinnie and Leah. Any questions, comments, additions. I know we talked about all the,
A lot of moving pieces.
yeah, a lot of moving pieces this time of year, which is pretty typical.
Just, you see Michael go.
I know, is he gonna be at our, building tour? No?
Me?
No, not you. We're talking about,
Klein.
Well, he'll be down.
we miss you too, but we're talking about the custodian.
He'll be at the gas station on Saturday.
Yeah, okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 7 is People Personnel Services. 7.1 is a Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Vinnie. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 8 is New Business. 8.1. Do we have any new business? Okay. Section 9 is Communication and Comments from the Public. Thank you for joining us. Does anybody? Please remember to state your name and your Pelham mailing address.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Abear. I reside at 804 Colonial Avenue, Pelham Manor. I would like to thank the board as a physician for your prudent adherence to public health guidelines put forth by the CDC and the American Association of Pediatrics, and hopefully soon by New York State's Department of Education. I would also like to express my disappointment that the word diversity does not feature in the board's stated goals for this year. The word is in fact conspicuously absent. I would like to encourage the board to reconsider that in light of the recently adopted policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would also encourage the board to look into hiring a DEI professional to that end. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Swani Aquino Chiravala. I have a couple questions that I'm unsure about. We talked a lot about kids who might need to miss school for whatever reason, and sort of what plans we have in place or contingency plans on how to help them. I wonder how, what plans are there for kids who have low cognitive functioning or who are disabled of some sort, who need like an IEP or a 504 form. Kids who need PT, OT, and speech, like how those services are provided to them. And who might have language differences. Yoga for kids, I think that would be also very awesome. Not just for the teachers, because there is evidence that there is benefit to behavioral and emotional well-being of the child. So that's it.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Swanee again. I forgot to ask, what is there a plan B for if the variant becomes really aggressive and we all need to quarantine?
Dr. Champ, you can probably, there's an answer to that question.
Yeah, most schools at this point are, the plan is to continue to be open unless the Department of Health or the state direct us to close or to shift to hybrid. We've done both before, so we could if needed. That's kind of our last, or we're hoping we don't get to that point.
And I'll have Ms. Chung respond to you about your other question.
Paula Wood, I reside at 62 Clifford. I wanted to echo what Ms. Hebert said about using the word diversity and having that as a primary focus in our goals for this year. And I wanted to also support that goal with just a quick story. Progressive Women of Pelham gave out 2 scholarships this year to graduating seniors. And we received 6 applications, all outstanding students who were very active in different ways. But every single one of those activists chose social justice initiatives as their focus for their activism. Even though they were involved in many different things, every single application focused on social justice and racial equality. And so I think this is an issue that is really important to our students based on those applications and those impressive students. So I think if you ask the students, they would probably agree with Ms. Hebert. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you for joining us tonight. So,
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
You got to fight for it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night, everybody.